This is Finland. The video you're about to watch takes place mostly in this very cold Scandinavian country. During this video, we'll talk about Finland's position in the Cold War and explain what factors influenced this nation's decision on this. But before all that, here's some background information and concepts that you need to know. Part 1. The Winter War. The first war of the trilogy began in 1939 and lasted until 1940. Named the Winter War, it was a direct result of the non-aggression pact between the Soviets and the Nazis. It stated not only that there would be a 10-year-long period of non-violence, but that the USSR would help Germany in the invasion of Poland. The USSR wanted to reach its grasp into the Baltics, as they received signed treaties of mutual assistance from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Russia continued to push into the Baltics and sought to trade territory with Finland. Finland quickly became cautious of Stalin, and Stalin became cautious of Finland. And although most countries, including Germany, would have advised Finland to take the deal with Russia, they declined. Stalin quickly reverted back to Russia and sent troops into Finland to attack. Amazingly, Finland's underprepared soldiers, caught off guard, were able to defend the first wave of Russians, but suffered a great loss of people and of resources. Fortunately, with knowledge that Finland had been the only country to pay their World War I debt in full during the Great Depression, President Roosevelt sent Finland 10 million to fight the Soviets, but with their resources depleted, Finland decided to wait. Only 1 year later, Finland was involved in yet another war, which came to be called the Continuation War. This was because it was viewed by the Finns as the second part of the initial war we just talked about. It lasted from 1941 to 1944. This is how this war went down. It began after the peace terms between Finland and the USSR that had brought the Winter War to an end. So, supposedly, Finland and the Soviet Union were on good terms, but in reality, the time period of so-called harmony was filled with tension and disagreement. During the peace that would end the Winter War, Sweden offered Finland a treaty or alliance between Sweden, Norway, and Finland, which would ensure Finland's security against the USSR. However, the USSR was not pleased and pressured Finland greatly until the nation rejected the offer. Then, Germany offered to ally with them and help the Finns get their land back in exchange for stationing their military in Finland, thus beginning the Second War and ending the peaceful year between the two countries. But Finland was facing some bad times. This was because Finland had lost many men in battle during the First War. To be exact, 25,227, and it's a small country, and now had a weak army, which basically forced Finland to give up land to the USSR. So, bitterly, Finland was again forced to give up land, and handed a bit more than 10% of itself over to the Soviets. Many negative repercussions came with this loss of land, including harm in Finnish industries. Also, something that was very sad for the country was the displacement of many people living in the land. Finland was in debt with the Soviet Union and having a very bad time economically. Now Finland was having major security issues. The country had hoped other nations, such as Italy or the USA, would help if the USSR invaded, but didn't receive much support because the countries were too worried themselves to worry about a small country in the north. Poor Finland! The country was alone and isolated and needed a new military equipment, which was usually sent late or in poor conditions. Things were looking dire for the small country. Relationships with the Soviets weren't very stable, leaving the Finns with a constant fear of being invaded. Finland once again faced a full-blown war and could not afford more casualties. These were the main Finnish hopes of how the war would unfold. Number 1. Germany and Finland win the war against the Soviet Union, getting the Finns their land back, maybe get some new land while they're at it, but this was not a priority. Number 2. Germany and the USSR both lose men and can't win. Finland gets another ally and moves back into its land. With the ally, USSR cannot kick them back out. Finland gets its land back. Number 3. Germany causes major damage on the Soviet Union, making them quickly beg for peace, getting the Finns their land back. Basically, Finland really wanted its land back. Part 3. The Lapland War. In September 1944, Finland signed a treaty with the Soviet Union following the Continuation War. This treaty was named the Moscow Armistice, and it consisted in the following. 1. Finland must cede the land. 2. They must pay war reparations of what today is $4 billion. 3. The legalization of the Communist Party of Finland, and ban those that the USSR consider fascist. 4. Individuals that the Soviets considered responsible for the war had to be arrested and put on trial. And 5. The Finns were forced to expel the German forces, and this is seen as a sign of betrayal by Hitler. Nazi Germany had taken control over much of Lapland during the Continuation War, though Finland never joined the Axis. At first, the Finns and Germans made an informal assent for Germans to leave Lapland through Norway. However, the USSR pushed Finland to quickly and aggressively get the Germans out. Germany did not want to leave Finland. This was mainly because they believed that they had the right to stay, since they helped Finland. They had also access to Norway, and they also hoped that having control over Lapland would have the USSR under blockade, and they wouldn't be able to break free. Both nations knew that the Lapland War was coming, so they both had time to prepare. While Germany improved road systems in Lapland in case they needed an escape route to Norway, Finland evacuated the people living in Lapland. The war began on October 1, 1944 and ended in April 25, 1945 with Finnish victory. However, the Germans polluted and destroyed the northern half of Finland, adding to the war reparations that Finland had to pay. And finally, the Cold War arrived in 1947. In the war, less commonly known as the war that couldn't happen because it would have wiped out human existence, Finland decided to remain, drum rolls please, neutral. Now, why the wars help with this decision, you ask? Mainly, Finland kept a neutral approach to the war for security purposes, given the recent wars it had gone through with the Soviet Union and Germany. This predominantly was because the nation could not join the Western Alliance and definitely did not want to join the Eastern Alliance, for quite obvious reasons like the fact that the Soviet Union had been trying to invade since the beginning of times. Therefore, with little choice, Finland decided to maintain non-alignment and neutrality during the Cold War. During this whole period of conflict and war, Finland kept a constant eye and guard up for the Soviet Union, given that this powerful nation was capable of attacking the small country in the north at any time. Some points of tension between these countries are the fact that Finland was still paying war reparations to the Soviet Union during the 1940s, and that the Soviet Union was highly suspicious of Finland during the time the Soviet Union was under Stalin's rule. The Finnish-Soviet Security Treaty of 1948 was created in order to prevent further conflict between the countries, both with their own interests in mind. The treaty addressed a situation in which Finland would be attacked or be under the threat of attack. In such a situation, a neutral state is entitled to defend itself and seek aid from wherever it is available. The treaty indicated in advance the source of such assistance in the aforementioned circumstances of an attack. Basically, the Soviet Union agreed to defend and help Finland if it was ever under threat of invasion. In conclusion, the previous wars in Finland affected its position in the Cold War by harming the country economically and militarily. This induced great fear in the nation, given the fact that they lacked security and safety. So, by just standing back and avoiding alliances, Finland believed their fate would be best. Hope this video helped you guys understand history better. See you next time!